All right, welcome back, everyone, and happy 2026. This is our first time recording in 2026. So Shannon had the idea to do just kind of a recap of all of our favorite science stories from 2025, where each of us could bring our favorite story and talk about it. So we're going to do that for this episode. But how's everybody doing?
Good.
Good.
Got some bad weather coming to Chicago.
Yeah.
True.
Alexa keeps telling me you can die going outside. She has a light that comes around when there's an alert or something like that. And normally I get excited because I think, oh, it's a package. But now she's just alerting like 10 times a day, telling me it's going to be so cold outside you could die.
Gosh. I think Alexa wants to keep you close too, though. That's part of her.
Yes.
Yeah, she wants you
She
to order
did
stuff.
tell me I didn't need to use bad language last week because I was swearing at the weather.
Are you serious?
Oh, John was home. I'm 100% serious.
Oh, that's rude.
It's one of those AI relationships that's already going south.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I can't. That's insane.
It was pretty weird.
Crazy.
I
Yeah.
wonder if she says that to Pete Davidson too.
Oh, right?
Those
Yeah.
stupid commercials.
Yeah.
Those are for Google, though, right?
Oh, are they? Okay.
No, I think it's Alexa. I think you're right.
Are you
I think
sure? I thought it was Google, one of the Google things. Anyway, it
I
I
doesn't
think
matter.
it's Alexa because
They're all the same to me.
yeah, they are all
Yeah,
the same.
true.
RJ was there. I called Alexa BITCH because she was doing something wrong, and she said sorry. So she reacted to my outburst at her. She was like, I kept on asking her to do some kind of music, and she was doing something wrong. And I said it like as a joke. I wasn't seriously saying it to her, and she was like, "Oh, sorry." So I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So I can't believe she's like telling you not to swear. Mine's like a mine has a different personality, I guess.
Well, who wants to go first with their story?
How about one of you guys?
Amanda, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll start. Yeah. So I didn't have like a story in mind, so I kind of went on a search today, and the headline of my article, and it's by the UCLA Press Service. The headline is "Without Campus Leftovers to Pick Through, the Beaks of This Bird Changed Shape During the Pandemic," and it's it's about dark-eyed juncos. It says dark-eyed. I'm going to read the key takeaways. Dark-eyed junco is a bird that typically live in mountain forests, have established thriving populations in Southern California cities where they eat food people leave behind. A UCLA biologist studying the biological adaptations that help them survive in urban environment has found that the bill shape of this species became more like that of their non-urban counterparts in the absence of people during the pandemic closures at UCLA. After campus reopened, the bills gradually returned to their previous shape, suggesting that the presence of people and their trash is driving the evolution of bill shape. So I thought that was pretty interesting. They, so they found that they were comparing the beak shape of the dark-eyed juncos on the campus, and then the
San Gabriel Mountains?
I'm trying to see where it. Sorry, I'm looking and can't see it. Just says they're forest relatives. If I read the actual study, I would know that. I'm just reading the reporting on the joke on the.
Really glad you're bringing that study up because one of our colleagues down at the University of Chicago, Trevor Price, used to be at the University of San Diego. And the research on these
University of California, San Diego.
Yeah, University of California, San Diego. Yeah, and in these juncos over the last 25 years have started breeding in areas in the lowlands where in the past they only spent the winter. So dark-eyed juncos in the west breed up in the mountains, and then and still do come down in the winter into the lowlands. But now there are these birds that are actually breeding in the lowlands, and so it's been this fascinating opportunity to study rapid morphological change of these birds because of this incredible difference in their breeding season habitat between the two types of areas. And I hadn't these things are going to, there have been a lot of studies or a number of studies that have come out talking about changes in bird behavior, not in morphology during the pandemic. And it's interesting to see, that those juncos can actually evolve changes in some aspect of their morphology that quickly. Although I would have said that if there was one group of birds that I would have thought might be able to do that, it would have been seed-eating birds like juncos.
Interesting.
It still shows there's a lot more than just genetic difference that makes things different, right? That's just bizarre.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so fast.
Yeah. So
I can't believe how
one of the
quickly.
one of the quotes from the lead researcher, the first author, Eleanor Diamant, she's a PhD student at UCLA. It says previously the researchers had seen relatively short, stubby bills on the juncos, and then over nearly 2 years of minimal human activity on the campus, junco parents raise babies with gradually longer, more slender bills, which are typical of non-urban juncos. And they said, we think that likely happened because when humans are not around, they're not leaving their trash around and they're not leaving their food around. And then
I have this vivid recollection during COVID. We do something called the spring count. And at the time, the lakeshore was cordoned off. You couldn't go out on it. And except that because I worked at the Field Museum, I was able to park in the lot and then walk across the barricades. And there's a hot dog stand we always go to. And I'll never forget, I was by myself. There was nobody else in that area, which is just crazy to be around the shed aquarium and stuff with nobody walking around. And like these house sparrows just came right up to like 3 feet from me. And I just had this feeling they were just thinking, where have all you people been? It's just like, this is.
That's so true. Yeah.
No,
Yeah. And they probably missed having the people around. Yeah.
I think so.
For food.
No,
Yeah.
it's amazing that you can get data on these things. And the other good thing about juncos is that they're common and they're fairly easy to catch. And so you can design studies like this where you can get those data, and it's really neat to see the kinds of different aspects of the biology of those birds that are changing. So one of the things that Trevor Price was actually telling me, I think yesterday, we had the defense of one of our graduate students, Abimanyu Lele, and Trevor was on his committee. And Trevor was talking to me about the fact that the birds in the lowlands lay 4 clutches a year, whereas up in the highlands, they lay 1 clutch a year.
Wow.
And it's again, because of the seasonality, they don't have to, they can raise more young. And so they keep doing it, which is, again, that's a big change in your annual reproductive cycle.
So why does Trevor's group think they are going from the highlands to the lowlands? Is it climate change or is it?
Good question. I think a lot of it is that's an interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'll bet it's actually hard to tease apart for sure. But
Okay.
but part of it is going to be just human, like food activities.
Okay.
But at the same time, you wonder, how did it start? Right? Because let's just say, I mean, one thing we know is at some point that there was at least one male and one female, and these things are always kind of hard to figure out. And clearly, there wasn't any penalty to them breeding in the lowlands, and so they started reproducing young, and it ramped up to populations. And another thing that would be interesting to ask is, are what happened in San Diego independent of what happened in LA? I don't know about that either.
What do you mean?
But you could imagine, and well, like, are there different populations that have been established in those two cities as opposed to the intervening to the extent that there is any intervening natural habitat.
Mm.
You see what I mean, Shannon? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
my guess is that they are different, coming from different populations. There's a big geographic distance between LA and San Francisco. So
Well,
yeah.
LA and San Diego.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's less. Sorry, I wasn't. Yeah, I don't know.
So John, the lowlands that Trevor's studying, is it forests, like really natural? Is
No,
it
they're
more
on
urban or more
campus.
suburban?
Yeah.
They're on
This is on
campus.
this. You make it super easy for the study.
Wow.
Literally.
Okay.
And I
So
think
this is
Trevor
like
had. I think Trevor had some his undergraduates from a class actually doing a lot of the behavioral um, work on these birds, watching them for several years to see what they're doing.
And I'm pretty sure the advisor of the graduate student is one of his former students who now has a job at UCLA.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Very cool.
who are the other authors on that paper, Amanda? Does it say?
So let me look and say specifically.
No, I think these kinds of studies are so fascinating. And another question I always have is are these kind of stories becoming more common because of the nature of the urbanization and things going on that these birds experience? I mean, we talk about this all the time. For instance, in a sense, what this is migratory drop off in a situation where the birds are only going up and down a elevational gradient for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But we wonder about that with birds in like barn swallows in South America there are now breeding populations in southern South America of barn swallow where historically there wouldn't have been.
And if you can't find that, Amanda, we could always put it in
Sorry.
the show notes later or something.
So the two authors it's Eleanor Diamant. She's now at Bard College, but she was a PhD student at UCLA. And then the other author is Pamela Yeh, Yeh last name, and she's also UCLA. Yeah.
No,
So,
John's
but yeah,
gonna have to look her up.
yeah,
That's what the web is for.
that's right.
I mean, it is funny. I had never really thought about that, like migratory drop-off, which we have several students that have studied or are studying migratory drop-off and its effects on speciation. So you can imagine that if that population doesn't go back up the mountain, it's liking its lowland life now. That's a step on the pathway of becoming genetically differentiated and ultimately speciate. So I mean, it's just one of the mechanisms. Yeah, it is a cool
So
thing, though.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Pamela did work with Trevor on her PhD.
Cool. Very cool.
She studies how human activities affect the evolution of species.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
When Amanda was showing that story, like before we got together, I was like, I wonder if John and Shannon know any of these people.
I know.
I bet there's definitely some connection.
Yeah. I assume you guys know everybody. Yeah.
No, but it's a small world.
Yeah. It is a small world. Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you for your attention on that. RJ, do you want to go next?
Sure, I can go next. Unless John or Shannon, do you want to go?
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Okay. Mine's a totally different direction. So I don't come across as many like science stories as the three of you. I mean, John and Shannon, you were, professional ornithologists, and Amanda, you scan all kinds of different things for work. So mine is this is a Newsweek article from November 11th of this year, and of last year, and it's robot falls on stage during debut. And so
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So a humanoid robot with artificial intelligence fell on stage during its official debut at a technology event on November 10th, prompting staff to cover the machine from public view while attempting to fix the malfunction. The robot was introduced by developers as an advanced example of anthropomorphic robotics built largely from domestic components. As the robot was being led on stage by two staff members to the soundtrack from the film Rocky, it lost balance and fell, leaving several pieces behind on stage. And so, and I'm going to tell you why That's my favorite story because I am into robots failing, and I'm so sick of people thinking that robots are the future, and I think that we need to be investing in things other than robots. So I'm not good off the cuff, so I kind of wrote my thoughts I want to just share. So I said, I don't care for robots. In a time where climate change is ramping up quicker than ever, forest fires where smoke spans the entire country, droughts, rivers drying up, mass extinction, species are literally going extinct every day. Why are we focusing on making robot butlers? I wish capitalism led to conservation, protecting the natural world, but instead it's ignoring all of that and building things that we don't need, literally at the expense of the natural world. I saw something recently like that Elon was saying he'd pay a lot of money if someone could figure out a machine that converts carbon dioxide into oxygen. And like someone commented, like, you're literally talking about trees.
Trees. Yeah.
It's like the natural world has so many amazing things that we need to understand, protect, utilize, and instead we're putting our money into things like robots to fix our problems. People make the argument that once we have robots, we won't need to pay labor and we can all share the money. But we all know that won't be the case. What will happen is the owner of the robot company will buy himself a new yacht and won't share any of the money with anyone. We're all being tricked if we think that we'll benefit off of the robots. So my science story this year is robots failing. We need to change the scope of what is important and fund things like natural sciences, conservation, green energy, and stop replacing the natural world with robots and machines. That's not the answer. It's probably too late, but this is what is important to me, so I wanted to share that with everyone. And I just have a little bit more. I often think back to the rusty blackbird pair that we saw last year, which we talked about on our rusty blackbird episode. So Amanda and I are, newer to birding, and I had the thought, what if that rusty blackbird pair was actually the last rusty blackbird that we'll ever see? How sad is that? Their population has been decimated. Bird populations are decreasing drastically, and so are so many mammals, reptiles, plants, habitats, and environments. And who's talking about saving this in the political world? No one. When I was growing up, I idolized people like Jane Goodall, David Attenborough, and it seems like people who stand up for the environment and animals, especially in politics these days, are demonized and ostracized, which makes me sick. So the next time you see a robot, just think about the amount of resources that went into making it and how those resources are being taken away from protecting the natural world around you. So that's why I like seeing a robot fail and fall.
I mean, that to me, it's really interesting because it's almost like they missed their window of when those would be hyped. Because if you look at people 20, 20, maybe even 30 and younger, but definitely 25 and younger, they're going back to flip phones. They're going to church. They're going to other places to be in communion with people face to face because they're missing that. And social media can't replace that. And that's what we know. And they're recognizing the problems of being so obsessed with their phone and with social media. So that's almost like their time has passed. And you would expect these tech guys to have their time passed because they don't live in a real world that you and I live in. They don't spend time around anyone who will actually challenge their ideas. They spend time around people who are like them or people who are so tied to them that they'll do anything they say. And I think that's the bleed over into the politics part of it through these guys is, they all think they want to live forever. Just ludicrous things. And the robots that are going to matter are going to be different kinds of robots. They're going to be the robots that make exoskeletons for people who have mobility issues so that they can get around. So we won't be worrying about how to fix people from the inside because those things, bodies are complicated and molecular processes are super complicated. So, so that's the robotics. I think that's going to change the world. Robotics having to do with monitoring people's hearts or
remote sensing,
those kinds of things.
Yeah, you're right. I should have targeted this more at robot butlers.
No,
because there are for sure robots that are gonna be important.
I mean, you think about how cool it would be if the robot could clean the house, but that's actually more complicated than you think it is.
Well, yeah,
and these robots are dumb,
right
now.
And why not pay a person to clean your house? You can afford a robot
because you have to develop relationships when you want someone to clean your house.
That's true.
And a lot of people I think the tide is turning, but it's people now, it's people our age that are going to be addicted to their phones, not my 25-year-old child, right?
I agree.
Because
It is
they are
swinging back.
seeing the effects of that. And there's a number of studies that have come out lately about for professors who have banned technology in their classrooms. No computers, can't take notes with computers, and you can't have a phone. And that experiment is playing itself out all across at least the United States. I don't know, probably even in the rest of the world, where the schools are saying no phones in the schools. What the professors are finding is that the engagement in their class went way up, that when the professor comes into a class, there's chatter, a lot more noise, not the clicking of keyboards, but they're actually talking. They're actually talking about what they're learning. They're talking to each other. And then the professor ratings are going up. So the professor's not doing anything different, just saying no phones, no computers. And the science is very clear that if you take your notes by hand on paper, it goes to a different part of your brain than it does if you type. And I've always wondered, because I love technology, and I've always wondered why I'm so tied to paper for certain things. And it's absolutely that. It's the act of writing it down. It just goes to a different part of your brain. Your recollection is better. Your understanding is better when you
At the risk of being
that.
argumentative, you have to write complete thoughts like you do, as opposed to what I do, which is write single words that I can no longer remember the significance of.
You don't know what you were talking about. I do that all the time. Yeah. Oh, so I have a comment on your story, RJ. I think I have like a totally cynical view. So I feel like in the past year, I've seen a lot of like robot failure videos, including the one we're talking about. And
that one is hilarious, by the way, RJ.
Okay.
Yes, and it's awesome for sure. But I have a feeling that, so I think I'm very pro robot just because I've seen what they do, like medically, like in surgery, like there's tons of, and also like, so RJ and we're currently watching a show called Evil Genius, and it's about
God, it's awful.
Yeah, so great show, and it has a perfect example of like if they had a robot who had been able to assess this guy who had a bomb around his neck, and now that's a modern use of robots. They use robots in bomb stuff, so like that would have been a good robot. You would have liked that robot.
All right,
like,
that
so
one I would approve of.
Exactly. So there's definitely like good robots and stuff. So my cynical take is I think we're seeing a lot of those robot failure videos because it's like AI trying to get us to focus on robots. Whereas like AI is like the real threat, of course. Yeah. I think nobody can argue that. Like everybody said, like AI is going to overtake us, and it's inevitable. It's only a matter of time. And I think the AI is like somehow pointing us toward like, oh, look at those stupid robots. Like they're never going to be anything. They're so foolish and stuff. And in the meantime, they're taking over the world. So that's my take on
AI's battling the robots.
So AI is trying to get us to focus on the robots and think like, oh, technology is like so behind and it's so benign. It's not going to do anything. There's no threat to us. Like that robot that like.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But
don't be afraid because they're actually these dopey things. Meanwhile, they're taking over.
That's honestly what I think. That's because I feel like I've seen a lot of robot failure videos, like, in the recent past. And I have no doubt it's because somebody's like trying to slip the wool over our eyes. Yeah.
That's terrifying.
I know. I think that's so. Yeah. So I'm super pro robot because we always control robots. That's my thing. Yeah.
So RJ, as you were describing it, one of the things I thought about was my birthday is in April, and last April I was trying to think about what to say, and I'd been thinking about it for a while, and I made a normal curve, which was basically designed to show the amount people care about the environment. And then I put a little arrow onto the far left-hand side and suggested that that's where Donald Trump and Elon Musk lay with respect to how they care about the environment. And I think that the whole thing about the robots not being part of nature and not really having much of a role in that sense is a really interesting point to make.
Yeah.
I'm not giving up the robot that vacuums in my house.
Yes, that's a good robot who you have total control over.
For now.
Well, no, it has a life of its own. It jumps the shark all the time. It's like, what the hell? You're in the wrong room. What are you doing?
And the definition of some of this gets, mixed at some level. I mean, so these remote recording stations associated with monitoring bird flight calls and things like that are providing all kinds of neat data. And so while they don't require a robot to go out, coming back to what Amanda was saying, I can imagine there are aspects of robotics that are going to be just game changing with respect to some of the things we can do.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think there will be good robots that do good stuff for nature, to John's point.
We'll see.
What the heck is going on here?
Shannon, are you having some
My technology is
robots?
It's not your Roomba. Don't blame it on your Roomba.
But you know what it is? Something happened and I can't hear out of my good ear in this thing. I can hear what you guys are saying out of my bad ear.
Oh,
Really?
I have wow.
That's great.
Oh my God.
That's
Sorry.
wonderful, Shannon.
I wasn't expecting that, and I don't know what happened. I don't know why.
Crazy. Does
All
someone have a YouTube ringtone?
No, that
Did
was
anybody else hear that?
That was Coldplay.
Coldplay?
Or Coldplay, sorry.
There we go.
Yes, and it was a spam call, and for a second it made my technology switch to something else. But when it kind of started coming back, all I could hear was from my right ear, and I have my cochlear implant under this right ear, and I realized that it was not, the words were not coming from my good ear. They were coming from my bad ear.
Wow.
Amazing.
That's awesome, Shannon.
That 3 days ago, that would not have been the case. I would not have heard through my bad ear at all.
Wow.
Awesome.
That's so exciting.
So, I mean, how do you define a robot? Because I think that's an important aspect of it. I do not want some 6 foot tall silver thing with with an apron around its waist. I don't want it cooking
Rosie.
for me. I mean,
Rosie from the Jetsons.
a lot of people want to place them in seniors' places so drug taking can be monitored, and elderly people can get help getting out of a chair or something like that. And I can see the utility of that. But the more friends you have is correlated with how long you live. So the more isolated you are, the shorter your life is.
I think those guys were pretty isolated that brought that robot out.
Yeah.
They are now.
Yeah. Wouldn't that robot in the senior care be taking a job away from a healthcare worker, though?
No,
Yeah,
so
but there
I'd
aren't
like to
enough
comment
healthcare
on that.
workers.
That's what I was going to say. So Japan's on the leading edge of that, and Japan has the rise in population of the elderly people is just blowing away the birth rate. So Japan naturally has a huge need for that, and they're on the leading edge of trying to use robots in elder care, but also robots to comfort people. There's robot toys that can soothe people who have cognitive and memory issues and stuff. So I feel like there's definitely a need, and I don't think they're taking jobs away from anybody in this case. Yeah.
Okay.
But they aren't helping the environment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah.
I mean,
Who wants to live to be 250 years old if in 250 years from now we're going to be living on with only humans and robots
that's
are the only
thing.
species left?
It's only technology that could have you living underwater, and that's why it's not going to happen ever, because we have to solve problems on Earth, not in Mars, not in space, not under the water, on the land, on the only planet that humans have. So I don't mind sending some of these tech people to Mars. That's fine. But The rest of us, you can enjoy your 5 seconds of breathing because you can't breathe on Mars. And all you have to do is look at that robot falling over. It was like something out of a Saturday Night Live skit, frankly,
Yeah.
to watch
That's why
that
I think
thing.
it was designed by AI.
So if you think you're going to make something so good that you're going to solve the problem of the fact that there's not enough oxygen, it's insane, right? Who is going to be the sacrificial lamb until you make that good? And then what happens at the first catastrophe, which is just going to kill everybody? You can't breathe there. Our planet is pretty damn awesome.
There are
And
no
we ought
birds
to
there.
stop messing it up. Yeah, there are no birds there. That's right. I mean, the desire to just use all that money to escape when you could use that money to make the lives of people better on this planet, the planet that gave these people this spectacular wealth, in the country that enabled these people to generate this spectacular wealth, and all they want to do is run away from taxes. You can't even spend as much money as they have. But if you look at how the women who have this kind of money approach life, it's to donate anonymously, to donate without making people write grant proposals, to better the world through causes without needing their names on buildings, no stroking people. These women don't need to be stroked like that. And anyways, now you've touched a kind of a...
Oh, I'm sure there's some good men like that too.
I mean,
hopefully.
2020.
Yeah.
just
Well, we can
Just
move
do
on from
good.
robots if we want.
right? Just do good. That's what I tell people. Just do good.
Yeah.
It's not
So you're
that
gonna go? You're
hard to
not?
be nice to people.
Shannon, you want to go?
Okay, well, I'll go and I'm going to do something pretty strange. Because it's not a specific story necessarily. It's a piece of knowledge I didn't have a few years ago that I do have now. So almost, if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you know that I lost hearing in my right ear. And it's been a struggle. I can't find birds outside, for example. I'm the ornithologist who can't find birds. I can't even find John in our own house because if he moves, I'm like, dude, you got to stay still. I don't even know what floor you're on. You keep moving. I can't find you. So he's like, will you help me find something? I'm like, I would help you if I knew where you were. But I don't. Anyways, it's been very frustrating. And then it leads me to my take-home message for this, which is that mammals are inferior. So my take-home message has to do with how people lose hearing, like I have lost hearing. So nobody knows exactly how I had hearing loss, but I can tell everybody who's listening yet again that if you have sudden hearing loss, it's a medical emergency. You need to go to the doctor right away, and don't just trust an emergency doctor to tell you have an ear infection, because you likely don't. And you need real treatment. You need to see an ear, nose, and throat specialist, because if you're going to regain any of your hearing, if you lose it the way I do, there has to be treatment that's done immediately. Antibiotics are not that treatment. High-dose steroids are the treatment to stop the inflammation and see if you can preserve any functioning of your hair cells. So it's the hair cells inside your cochlea. So your cochlea is the shell, the snail-like organ that's inside of your ear that sends signals to your brain. And for me, what likely happened is that I lost hair cells. There are inner hair cells and outer hair cells around this little spirally thing. And it's likely that I lost hair cells across the entire length of my cochlea, outer hair cells. And so what that did is it means my brain and my ear can't connect. So sound can't trigger the same things in your brain. So what it means is I hear tones. They have no real functional sound. I can't understand words. My sentence recognition with this ear is essentially zero. My word recognition, it's less than 20%. If I don't get it, that's why I do a lot of lip reading to give me context clues. And my brain gets super confused in any place where there's any sound at all. And you would think that I have one really excellent ear because I grew up in a tiny town and I was a nerd and I didn't go to concerts and I didn't wreck my ear as a kid. So I have excellent hearing in my good ear. But when I go into spaces, even my excellent ear cannot compensate for the jumble of sounds that goes into my brain. So I have spent the last couple of years, my PhD and my relationship with the University of Chicago has let me lurk as a ear, nose, and throat scientist, a hearing scientist in a lot of spaces, which I find hilarious. But it's really fun because I have to turn this stupid hearing loss into something that's scientifically interesting, or I'll lose my mind because I have to turn everything into something that is intellectually stimulating, unless it makes me crazy. And so what I've learned going into these spaces is that mammals are inferior. If I were a bird, the things that I study, and I lost my hearing this way, within a few days, I would start to be generating my hair cells again. And within a few weeks, I would hear perfectly. So a chicken would have regrown its hair cells. And there's good studies to show that that's what happens now, because you can do things to chickens you can't do to people. Stop them from living, cut open their brain and see what's going on, which obviously we're not doing that with people. So the things I've learned that I think are so profound is why understanding the tree of life and understanding human and mammals' position in this tree of life can be so important. And what happens in chickens is that there is kind of a helper cell attached to the hair cell. And in humans, when there is hearing loss, that's it. You cannot regenerate these cells. That's it. So the interesting aspect of the science that I've learned about over the last couple of years is that we can use what birds are doing to try to understand how to solve this problem in humans. So what happens in birds is when there's this hair cell loss, and that could be from a loud noise, it could be from an infection or whatever, the little helper cell, this progenitor cell, turns itself into a hair cell almost immediately. So there are signals that get released from the hair cells when they die, and those signals trigger molecular responses in the helper cell that's right beside it to cause it to go into almost like an embryonic state and rediscover the developmental process to produce a functioning hair cell very quickly. So we can't do that. And what scientists are now doing is trying to understand the pathways that happen in birds to see if we can't induce hair cells, either the hair cells that are dead or more likely the little helper cells that are still beside the hair cells. That's the evolutionary part, the tree of life part, is that these little helper cells still exist in humans. They just don't function. So how do we turn that little helper cell into something that will turn itself into the hair cell and restore hearing? And so there's trials that are going on that are been hit or missed, where they are trying to use, they've developed these things to actually deliver any treatment into the part of the cochlea that you would need to, which is challenging in and of itself when you think, how am I going to get, if I have a treatment or a drug or whatever, how am I getting it to where it needs to go? And then when it's there, how am I getting it inside of the cells so that they do the things that they need to do? Well, obviously, there's a lot of reductionist thinking that's going on about that. They think, oh, I found the pathway. I'm just going to fix that pathway. It was never as simple as that. It's the systems biology kind of approach to take this reductionist thing and put it in more in the context of whole individuals and whole systems. So that is the thing that I learned the most about in the last year or two. And that's what's going to save people's hearing, is these kinds of science where you recognize that the tree of life and evolution has given you opportunities to see how you can fix a problem in humans. So yeah. So every failed one of those trials puts us a step closer to a successful trial. So that's my lesson here. I'll show you what this thing looks like.
Oh, cool.
So a few weeks ago, I had surgery to stick an implant in my head. They kind of dig out a part of your skull, and in this, there's a magnet, and then there's kind of like the brains of the system. And then there is a series of electrodes that get curled into your cochlea. And those electrodes that are there's 23 of them that are along this kind of curvy thing. They're replacing the sound for me, or they will. Obviously, it's nowhere near as sophisticated or doesn't have as many connections as your real hair cells do. But the technology is such now that, so they have a processor and a magnet, or this computer part and a magnet. And then after you heal a bit, they do what they call activate, which is what happened to me on Tuesday afternoon. And they stick this thing on the magnet. So this thing now attaches to my head like a magnet. And when you belong to some of these Facebook groups, some of this is hilarious because people will go through places and bang their head. And if they're by anything magnetic, this thing will fly off and stick to the
Wow.
stick to the magnet. So they're like, where the hell did this go? So there are microphones on here that pick up the sound, and it sends the sound down the little coil to this thing attached to my head that sends the signals into the brains of the system that's been, stuck in my skull after a big divot got taken out of my skull, that send sound waves down to these 23 different electrodes that then stimulate my cochlear nerve the way the hair cells do, or kind of the way the hair cells do. And
amazing. Sound
goes into your ear. And now the goal is to teach your brain. And this is the good part of humans, is that people's brains are very flexible for some things. And in this case, I was really lucky because I heard words within a couple of minutes of this thing being turned on. I don't know why I was lucky. Maybe the earth is paying me back a little bit of luck from the bad luck I had with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois getting this thing in the first place. But so then you teach your brain how to associate words with sounds again. And it was clear right away in this activation that I could hear John's voice and understand John's voice much faster than the audiologist who had turned the thing on.
Okay.
And because your brain retains these memories of sounds. And so if you, as soon as I heard his voice, I could actually, it's almost like I could feel my nerves connecting inside my brain. And I could feel them kind of doing calculations to tell me that that's John's voice in this deaf ear.
I know that guy. Yeah.
And so that's part of the training. And then I put on then I was waiting for the surgeon to come to make sure that scar in the back of your ear was healing, which it is fine. And so we were sitting in the waiting room thing, and I decided to play a podcast in my ear because, of course, I have to experiment on myself, right? And do things that they tell you not to do because nobody's going to tell me what to do. And I played a podcast in my ear, a podcast of people who I know. And at first it was like jumbled sounds, which is what it is for most people. You hear beeps and the voices go from Mickey Mouse to Darth Vader. And anyways, so I put it on, and at first, in the first few seconds, it's like, oh God, because it sounded strange and I wasn't hearing words. And then all of a sudden I could feel again my brain start to connect itself to what it is supposed to be doing. And then I could hear the words. And then within a minute or two later, I could actually distinguish the podcast people's voices because they were familiar. And that turned, to me, that was kind of weirdly miraculous that could actually happen. I mean, there is not a chance before this thing was turned on that I would hear your voice in my ear. I haven't for 3 years without extreme amplification. In 3 years, I have not heard anybody's voice come into this side of my head. No words. I can tell people are talking. No words, ever. Which is why I fail all the hearing tests. And when you're a type A overachiever like me, failing tests is not high on your list of things to do. And I hate failing hearing tests. I hate failing any tests. But Yes. What do you think this is?
Oh
That's why I
no.
asked.
Is it
That's
a
why I
robot?
asked. That's what I asked. How you view what you call robotics? Because the thing that's
Oh.
in my head is very much technological like that,
I
and I
corrected. I
would
said
consider
robot
that.
butlers was my problem.
The problem is robot butlers.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of technology that is enabling people to do this, to make something
Right.
like this, which restored at least it. Don't get me wrong, sound kind of weird. At first, my own voice sounded super weird, and then I could feel again my own voice start to naturalize in my head, um, which is which is so strange. And then I took it off, and then I woke up yesterday and put it back on, and they warn you that this will happen, which is that you kind of regress at night because you don't have the simulation coming in again. And so I put on the processor and I'm like, oh, because it's very distracting to have these strange, unnatural sounds. But then within a few minutes again, I could feel my brain starting to interpret the sounds that were coming in my ear. So it's kind of, that's technology that does good. Because if you stimulate your brain, you're less likely to have depression and you're less likely to commit suicide if you try to solve hearing loss. And I think there's too many people who are suffering really dramatically with hearing loss when this technology could be used to make their lives a lot better. And I think there should be better collaboration with the hearing aid companies and these companies to use artificial intelligence a little bit better in a more modern way to help people's hearing. So I think that robotics, if I view that as robotics, I think of it as really super positive. And then it's really fun to lurk in other scientific disciplines.
Cool.
Yeah,
Just is.
Jeez
But,
Louise.
I would have heard 2 years and 11 months ago if I were a bird.
That's
So Shannon,
astonishing.
is that just birds or is it like
No, it's mammals that are the problem. Mammals are
Okay.
inferior. And it's an interesting thing because I don't know why. I mean, what is the trade-off that's going on inside of mammals that pathway was turned off? Why is that pathway so hard to turn on? It's not that hard to turn chickens into making teeth, a similar path
Wow.
that's been lost in birds, right? You can put a certain developmental cells in a chicken and they'll develop a beak. They'll develop teeth, I mean. But so what is it about humans and hearing that means you can't turn that pathway back on? What are the higher order consequences of turning that pathway back on in humans? I don't know. But I do know it's a comparative approach that will tell you that. You'll never figure that out just by studying humans, ever.
Mhm.
You will only figure that out if you understand the tree of life and understand how other organisms have solved a problem. So that's my pontificating for the day. Evolution is amazing. It's produced billions of natural experiments over the course of billions of years, and we can learn from them. RJ, if we want to know how to save the world, it's going to be through natural history, through understanding past life and what happened to it so that we can solve the problem now and into the future. But it's not going to be a robot. You're absolutely right. And John and I have been to enough meetings now with climate people, and they want to use technology desperately. They want to shoot lasers into the sky to capture carbon. And you're right, it's trees. We know how to solve that problem. Stop wrecking the environment. Stop producing so many greenhouse gases. Stop getting rid of species. Stop breaking the network that connects all life together. And maybe Earth can recover, but it's not going to recover by robots.
All right, John, are you ready for yours?
So I'm fascinated. We didn't talk a lot about how we were going to set up the different things we chose for this. And I'm going to choose something somewhat personal, but it has to do with the National Science Foundation and what's happened over the last year. And it starts with our new curator of mammals, Anderson Feijó, coming to me about an idea he had to resurvey elevational transects in Manu National Park in Peru for birds and mammals. And this was something that was done with NSF funding to Bruce Patterson and colleagues. He was our mammologist before Anderson was hired, and he's retired now. They did this transect going from basically 500 meters all the way up to above tree line in the Andes for birds and mammals back in around 2000 over the course of several field seasons. And so the idea is what's happened to those data over that 20-year period. And then the other thing that happened was that back then, this was the end of 2023 or 2024, there was a call for proposals for something called biodiversity on a changing planet. That was the call for proposals. And one of the sections of that was going to be jointly funded by the U.S. government and the Chinese government. And Anderson had just spent 6 years in China working at one of the leading institutions for mammalian and bird research. And so we put together a proposal to the National Science Foundation, which is also going to be jointly reviewed by the Chinese Science Foundation, to redo transects in Peru, these ones that I was just telling you about, and also redo transects that the Chinese had done in the Himalayas. The idea was we get a comparative set of data across the two projects that we could look at a bunch of questions, some of which were related to climate change. And of course, things change and DOGE shows up, and the biodiversity on a changing planet involving the Chinese government and the U.S. government is probably not a likely thing to happen. We ended up actually sometime in January or February, I think, actually getting reviews from our proposal from the U.S. side. And it wouldn't have gotten funded because some people didn't like it as much as they liked other proposals. But we never heard what was going on from the Chinese side. And my point in all this is that coming back to some of the things we've already been talking about earlier on in the podcast, is that if we really want to save the world, it's going to take everybody. And one of the things I love about American academic institutions is they've developed strong ties with China. And my feeling is if you want to make a case for saving the world, you need to work with everybody in the world. And that includes the Chinese as much as anybody. And, so I'm really sorry I didn't get a chance to had that proposal gotten funded, possibly, get to interact with some of the top scientists in China trying to save the biodiversity there.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Is it still possible?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think we're going forward because of the nature of things in trying to get funding in the U.S. from the federal government. We'll go forward with the proposal to NSF just to work in Peru with colleagues there.
Mm-hmm.
But it just shows you the breadth of things that are possible, and the fact that the Chinese can help fund these kinds of projects and are willing to. And I think that's a really important sign that the Chinese government is willing to put funding into efforts to do better for the world's biodiversity across the world.
Right, for the whole world. Yeah. Wow. That's very cool, John.
Next time, I was selfish when I talked about hearing loss. There's a couple really cool studies that have come out about Darwin's finches, showing that DNA. We think of DNA being the genetic material, the genomic material, but there's a couple of new studies come out looking at a couple of species across urban and rural gradients in the Galapagos, showing that these finches. And they can differ morphologically in these two, just even across an urban to rural gradient, but they have no noticeable genetic differences. So what they did was, because sequencing can do this to you now, is that you can get methylation patterns. So your DNA stuff gets stuck on your DNA that regulates whether genes turn on or off, or how fast or how slow, or whether at all they get turned on and off. And you kind of need certain things like that because we're diploid organisms. So we have two copies of each gene. And sometimes you don't want both of them expressed. So you got to stop things from being expressed. And you can do that by sticking things on. In this case, it's a methyl group, which is CH3, molecularly. And it turns out that these birds that differ across this urban-rural gradient differ substantially in the patterns of methylation in their, so their genomes don't differ, but the patterns of methylation differ. And that can cause differences in morphology. So that's not a genomic difference in that sense.
Like Juncos.
Anyways.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Like Juncos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So there's all kinds of things that happen that kind of blow your mind when you think about, and this methylation patterns are some of the inherited trauma that you hear about with Holocaust survivors, for example, how it lasts for generations because, some of these methylation patterns can be, in theory, can be passed
Oh, wow.
down so that your offspring's DNA could have these characteristics. But
Oh, wow.
anyway, so it's not just cognitive behavioral therapy, but there's biology behind some of that potentially. Anyways, so
Interesting.
that's the real science thing, as opposed to me selfishly talking about hearing loss.
It wasn't selfish.
That was
Yeah,
real
that was-
science. That was
yeah.
super interesting. Wow. Very
Well,
cool.
before we wrap it up, this is putting everyone on the spot. Does everyone want to say one positive thing for 2026 that they're looking forward to? I know we didn't talk about this before.
So I'm going to go with Louise Bott to New Zealand, Tasmania, and mainland Australia to get European goldfinch sampling for her dissertation
Cool.
That's so exciting. When do you go?
in May.
Oh,
Oh, cool.
that's awesome, John.
Yeah. I can't believe they're in New Zealand.
What I keep saying is
Well,
is
British
it's all-
colonies are everywhere.
It's true. Is it like an escape situation like here?
same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
But one of the questions is, where did they escape from? And Louise has data from the native range. I'm going to guess in this case, it's like Bermuda, where they've probably come from Great Britain.
Oh, okay.
But
Crazy.
But
Find out.
speaking of changes fast, Louisa's data, I don't think when we had our episode, we knew this kind of stuff, but the birds on Bermuda are just dramatically different from the native distribution in size, in color, in shape. So
maybe in methylation too.
it could be, for sure.
Yeah.
That could be a part of successful introductions. Things, how DNA being methylated regulates itself, which I don't know anything about. Somebody probably does. But so this modern technology, robots, can give you different aspects of the molecular biology of individuals. So I'm rescuing robots.
What's that?
I'm rescuing robots.
You are.
What you're saying is,
Yeah.
Robots are good.
27
Robot butlers are bad.
Now,
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe no RoboCop.
RoboCop. Yeah. Yikes.
Also not good. John, what were you gonna say?
I was just saying, it always makes me think about the pediatrician I had when I was a kid, who I swear to God, every single year would tell my mom whether eggs were good or bad. And it just oscillated back and forth.
It went back and forth. That's hilarious.
And they were bird eggs. So
Yeah. Amanda, do you have anything?
I mean, that's a good question. I was gonna say, I'm excited for our vacation in February.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
Just looking.
Costa Rica?
Yeah. Only
No,
looking
not
forward to
Costa
that.
Rica. We'll do that eventually,
Oh
though.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Someday.
Yeah.
Someday Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to continuing doing this with you all. This is still continues to be so much fun and such a bright part of just getting together every month and doing this is so special. So that's something in 2026 I'm looking forward to.
I second that. It's always fun to see you too. I look forward to that too. Yeah. What about you,
And
Shannon?
I have lots of things, actually, given that I'm usually the glass half empty person. And John's the glass half full person. I'm the glass half empty person. But so I went out on a complete limb that John's not going to come out on with. And I agreed with a very, very good friend of mine to go see a David Byrne concert in May in Milwaukee.
Wow. Cool.
I haven't done anything with respect to music since I lost my hearing. And in fact, I can't listen to music I can listen to new music because I don't have a connection to it, but I can't listen to music that has mattered to me through my life because the music is so connected to the space and the people and the things that when I listen to music, it doesn't, those memories can't come out because the music sounds so different that I feel like it's been blocked. And that's why music is really hard for me. I don't listen to it because it makes me either mad or profoundly sad. So I have now January, February, March, April. I have 4 months to teach my brain what music is again.
Oh, cool.
That is
So
so
that I
cool,
can
Shannon.
go to that concert. And music is the hardest thing to train cochlear implants to listen to because the robot is tuned to speech, not to music. And so that's one of the fundamental things that people find difficult is how you train music. And so I will be listening to music and reading the lyrics, listening to music I know, reading the lyrics and teaching my brain that music can be a part of my life in that way. And we're going with someone, I'm going with someone who was instrumental kind of in introducing me to the Talking Heads when I first started in graduate school. So the first time I saw Stop Making Sense, which is their famous music video back then, Music Me, was at her house. So
cool.
with all of these new people that I met in graduate school, I used to be fun.
You still are fun.
Yeah.
No, I'm not so fun anymore.
You're going to a David Byrne concert. That's as fun as it gets, Shannon.
Huge.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So that's a good thing. Our graduate
exciting.
students continue to be amazing, fun, informative. We're going to have another party with my hot chocolate maker, and I'm going to be cleaning some of the freezer out because the stress over this damn cochlear implant has made baking go in overdrive in this house to where we have to buy another freezer just to withstand it. Our son's hockey team likes it when I give him bags of things that he can take on road trips because they benefit from them as well. But, there's really only so much baking 2 people can eat. So we're going to have a party and get rid of some of the baking so I can fill it up again. Sushma Reddy, who's a friend of ours, gave us vanilla from Madagascar, from the Madagascar vanilla beans that she brought back with her on her field trips. That's not very many people that have friends making them vanilla from things they do on a field trip. So it just reminds me of how amazing it is to have jobs like ours and friends like ours who go all over the world and learn all kinds of new things. And then people who listen to this podcast have been so nice.
Yes.
And then we're going to bring more of our friends on. So those are all good things.
Awesome.
They better warm the world up because tomorrow is not going to be a good day in my life.
John, were you invited to John Byrne?
David Byrne.
David Byrne.
But it's in May.
Are you? Is it when you're in New Zealand?
It was. So we said yes, and then it was like, wait a minute, this is the optimal time to.
I would never deprive him of doing that because he hasn't been there, and I don't know that I could go into a plane. My experiences in planes since I've lost hearing have been okay to. I'm going to jump out of the window of this plane. I don't care what happens to me when I do. That's how painful being inside this plane is. So I don't know that I could do something like that. But anyways, I want John to go, and I'm glad he gets to go to a place. I mean, he's going to Lord of the Rings land. Think about it.
You've never been,
we have
John?
friends all over there. So.
Wow.
Oh, cool.
Wow. That's exciting.
Yeah, no, it'll be fun.
It's awesome. That is awesome.
2026. It's going to be a great year.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was fun. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to stop recording.